Audiomatic.
Hello friends, you're listening to Ask Aakar Anything on Audiomatic. You can send in your recorded questions on your phone or email them to me at aaa@audiomatic.in. You can also leave a question on our Facebook page, facebook.com/audiomaticin. Our Twitter handle is @audiomaticin. Let's begin the show with this question.
Hello Aakar, I'm Rishi from Mumbai, and my question to you is, have you seen Shaadi.com's dowry calculator? What do you think of this initiative? And what percentage do you think would have actually clicked on this wanting to know how much dowry they can actually get?
Rishi, I hadn't actually seen the calculator before I came across your question. And to listeners who don't know about it, it's at www.shadicares.org/calculate-dowry. I'll just say that again, shadicares.org/calculate-dowry. How many people would click on it wanting to know how much they would get? I think most people. I certainly did it with the intent of finding out purely by way of curiosity. And I think we are raised in a culture where self-worth for males to some extent comes out of what it is that we can derive on our wedding day. It's beautifully done, I must say. I won't give the secret out to those people who don't know what it's about, but I think you ought to go there. I think the construction of the site, the way that it executes the program and the final bit, I think is fantastic. I would say most people would click on it, no matter how educated, no matter how enlightened they might be. Most of them would click with the intent of finding out what their self-worth would be. It's a terrific thing, I think. Email question from Suparna S. Shashi Kapoor was awarded the Dada Saheb Phalke Award recently. What is your favorite Shashi Kapoor film? Shashi Kapoor was fantastic as a foil rather than as a lead, I would say. Whether in the comic sense, and here my favorite film would be Pyar Kiye Ja, thunderously funny film with Mahmood in it. The other film where he's a bit serious would be Trishul, where he has a very, very finely played, very sensitively essayed role that acts as the foil to Bachchan, who is very brooding and very angry. I think Shashi Kapoor as an actor was underrated by Bollywood, as are many actors, and I think the people who got him best, the ability to emote and act without much facial expression or physicality, were Merchant Ivory. And I think that films that they made with him, like Householder, Shakespeare Wala, they show him best. Chaurangi Lane is a good film. I think that of all the Kapoor family, he represented the artistic side and the populist side both best. I think we think of Raj Kapoor as doing that, but I think it was Shashi Kapoor who was actually a genuine artist who had a strong element of what it required to be a popular and famous actor. A terrific actor, and I'm really happy he's got the award.
Hi Aakar, this is Zia calling in from Hyderabad. How do you come to terms with admiring the work of an The topic came up when my friends and I were discussing the wisdom behind naming the Hubble telescope after Edwin Hubble, who was a phenomenal racist. The conversation quickly moved on to Mel Gibson, Roman Polanski, who was arrested for pedophilia back in the 70s, or maybe even last week when Salman Khan was arrested over running over homeless people, who are brilliant artists in their own right, but are absolute. So I would like to know your thoughts on that.
Zia, how do you reconcile the work of someone you don't really like at a personal level? I think it's a good question. I suspect, given that the question has been asked, you are self-aware and you don't have a problem actually recognizing the worth of the people you named. And I think that's a good thing. I think we ought to be able to separate the work that men and women do from their personal lives. There's a fabulous book by Paul Johnson called Heroes, in which he writes about the foibles and weaknesses of very, very great people. For instance, Tolstoy, who abandoned his wife and his children towards the end of his life. For instance, Karl Marx, who had a bastard daughter and dumped it on his comrade Engels. We need not look that far. Mahatma Gandhi's stories about his treatment of his son Harilal are known to us. Walt Disney was a psycho in many ways. I think that all of us have a side to us which is frail, which is innocent, which fails, and I think that ought not to be held against us when our work is being judged. I think Hubble told us not that long ago, it's just a century or so, I think, that the universe was actually expanding. It wasn't static, something that even Einstein had not known. A phenomenal discovery. And I think that that is what he ought to be remembered for, not his casual racism, not his personal frailties. And this email question from Arvind Natarajan in Chennai. With PM Modi starting to show his fascistic tendencies with his attempts to influence CBI, SC, ECI, should India be worried given his track record in Gujarat? I think I would use the word fascistic and fascist a little more carefully. I'm not sure it applies to a democracy. Fascist nations like Italy in the 30s tend to be one-man governments. I don't think the current dispensation is that. Also, of the three institutions you've named, two, the Supreme Court and the Election Commission of India, are fairly independent. I don't think that they have a history of being subservient to authority and the state, particularly the ECI after Session took over about 25-30 years ago. I don't think we need worry too much on that count. I think the CBI, unfortunately, has been misused by all governments that have had control over it. The Supreme Court has, in my view, interfered in the working of the CBI in the last decade and a half. One might argue that that is a good thing, given that most governments tend to use it as a tool against their opponents. But I think even there, given that fact that the Supreme Court has its hand in it, I don't think there's much scope for Modi or any other Prime Minister to do much mischief. I would be patient. I would give him a little more time than he has had so far. And I would not use the word fascistic and fascist, because I don't think they've been borne out by his behavior.
Hi Aakar, this is Dilip. I just moved to Delhi this month after working in Mumbai for years. There's this unsaid war between Mumbaikars and Delhiites, and I don't want to get stuck as collateral damage. Can you help me out?
I think, Dilip, that for people who are not from the subcontinent, Europeans, people from the US, if they were to come to India, I don't think they would discern too much of a difference between these two cities. To them, they might look fairly similar, chaotic, noisy, dusty, with the food being particularly spicy, very different from what they would be used to. I think it's people of the subcontinent who would notice the most subtle differences, that Delhi is more historic, it's got older monuments, the culture tends to be somewhat rustic. Bombay is more modern, the architecture is Victorian, neo-Gothic. The people tend to be, well, less rude, if I may put it that way. Does Delhi have its advantages? I think it does. I think it's more representative of India than Bombay is. The journalist M.J. Akbar, now with the BJP, once said that it's about time Bombay established diplomatic relations with the rest of India. I think that's quite true. Bombay is a very different city. It's organized differently. It's the city of immigrants, founded in the 18th century for the most part, where merchants from Surat were brought in, a great port city. All port cities around the world have a certain sort of difference between them and the rest of the country. I think Bombay is quite like that. Bombay is unintellectual, and I think this is one of the disappointments that those who live in the city, as I have with it. Delhi is the place to gravitate to if you have any sort of interest in literature or culture. You won't find too much of that in conversations in Bombay, unless you're interested in Bollywood or the stock market, and many of us are not. Bombay is not really a particularly interesting place to be. Delhi, I think, is let down by a fault which is not of its own making, which is that the political hierarchy and structure is based out of there, and I think that comes with its attendant problems in terms of traffic and VIP movement and so on. Outside of that, I think it's a pretty nice city. I don't think that there's much of a conflict between residents of Delhi and Bombay. It's made up mostly by media people such as myself. I hope you have a good stay in Delhi.
Hi Aakar, this is Tridivesh, currently calling from Jodhpur. I would like to know why the color blue has historically been associated with the Dalit movement in India. Why blue? Why no other color? What does it signify? What are the associations with the Dalit and the Dalit movement?
Tridivesh, I can think of two things. I'm not sure either of these is the authoritative answer. The first is that according to Ramchandra Guha, Dr. Ambedkar wore a dark blue suit in the last couple of decades of his life. If we see the iconography, if we see the portraiture, if we see the statuary of the man, throughout India, he is wearing a suit and a blue suit. I think that is one association. The other thing that strikes me here is that the Maharashtra government puts out a set of volumes, which is the collected works of Dr. Ambedkar, which is also covered in blue, mostly blue with a bit of yellow. The second thing I want to say is that some Buddhist flags have a Neel. Some bits of it are colored blue, symbolizing peace perhaps or calmness. Outside of these two broad reasons, I'm not sure why blue should be associated with parties like the BSP or the Dalit movement in general. I have read one very fine biography of Buddha by Karen Armstrong. In that, if I remember it right, there is no mention of any color as being his favorite. I would say that the two reasons I've given above probably are why it is that the movement and the parties tend to have that color. Email question from Muhammad Jafar in Cochin. Do you shop online? What do you think of shopping websites going app only? I do shop online. I buy lots of rubbish. One good indicator of people who shop online, as in my case, is knowing your credit card number by heart, which I do, though I don't remember my mother-in-law's birthday or indeed my mom's birthday. I do know the 16 digits of my credit card number. What do I think of companies that are going app only? I think it's a reflection of the second generation of internet users taking over. I think when I first started using the web, which is more than 20 years ago, which is quite remarkable, the browser was the only way to access the web. And we didn't have the existence of the cloud. Obviously, there was not much shopping in those days. I think an app reduces the levels of interaction needed to be able to purchase. You just hit a couple of buttons and you're out. And I think that more and more websites that are shopping only, as opposed to the great portals of 25 years ago, are going to go app only. I think it's a good thing. Those of us who are not used to it should get used to it. So then see you folks. Send in your recorded questions as always, or just email them to me at aaa@audiomatic.in, and do listen to the new episodes of Ask Aakar Anything on audiomatic.in every week. Also on Audiomatic, catch our show with Kunal Roy Kapoor and Anuva Pal, the funniest guys I know. The show's called Our Last Week. Don't forget to click on it.
Audiomatic. You can find us at audiomatic.in or look for our shows on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher.